All right, hello, and thank you uh, for watching my video, and I'd like to welcome you back as well. So in the video that you just observed, I led four of my colleagues in a discussion centered around what came to mind when you think of a professional development, or in other words, what the word professional development meant to each of them specifically. So this was the general theme for our conversation. So before beginning within the activity, I first began with a short and simple introduction of myself and my position on campus. After introducing myself, I then allowed each of my colleagues the opportunity to take a short moment to introduce themselves, their position, as well as their experience in education. Directly following this introduction, I proceeded by sharing the focus for our meeting with my colleagues by reading our learning objective as well as our language objective, which was also posted, bear with me, which was also posted in clear view on the wall along with our agenda for our meeting. So our learning objective for the meeting reads, the teachers will analyze effective professional developments and what qualities are needed to develop a professional development. The language objective for the meeting reads, the teachers will share and listen to their peers identify what qualities foster an effective professional development. After reading the learning objective and our language objective for our meeting, I led the meeting into our first activity, which was brainstorming. For our brainstorming activity, we started with the following guiding questions. That question was, when you think of professional developments, what comes to mind, or what do you expect to see? During this activity, we started out using a bubble map of professional development to help us take note of our ideas of what we brainstormed from that specific topic. For my brainstorming activity, we came up with several key points which we listed on our bubble map. Those key points suggested the things that we think of when we think of a professional development, or what we expect to see would be professional development should be in alignment by a subject or location. Professional development should also be meaningful and relevant. We expect to have a takeaway, something to go back to our campus to share with our staff. We expect to learn new resources that are relevant to us and our subject. We also expect professional development to have a realistic or a relevant outlook. Along with that, we expect to have support in using those resources that are presented to us during professional developments. Along with those resources, we expect to receive adequate training. Along with collaboration, we expect professional developments to be in alignment with our subject, as well as with TEA and its curriculum. So after coming up with these general ideas, I then took a moment to read over the ideas that we came up with. After going over those ideas, I then guided the meeting into our next thought with another guiding question. This guiding question reads, what are some things that we should look at when developing a professional development? So when considering these things, some of the responses that we received were, we should consider, who are we developing the professional development for? Or what are we developing the professional developments for? So the who and the what. So from here, the collaboration continued, and we elaborated and built off of one another's ideas. At one point, Miss Amin piggybacked off of Miss Gray's statement of what the potential purposes would be for professional development. Miss Amin added the important point of looking at the data to identify the strengths and the weaknesses. This will make sure we centered our focus around making sure the professional developments are meaningful as well as impactful. Also, identifying the who and the what showed to be very important factors in planning the effective professional development. After identifying these important factors of what we needed to take into consideration for planning a professional development, we then moved on to discuss what resources we would need for the professional development. Important resources mentioned were the program director and other personnel in the district that does professional development planning to help with gathering materials that would assist in facilitating their professional development. At this point, I had each of my peers jot down ideas for resources on their note cards, because unfortunately we ran out of space on the board. So as a result, I had to do a bit of improvising to help us along with the process to help us to run a little bit more smoothly. So it was here during our discussion of resources that Ms. Means spoke about a plan not working out as they planned, resulting in them having to go back to begin from the beginning, and how frustrating that was. This point led me into my next question, which led me to ask my peers if they had ever attended a professional development that they felt was not effective, or if they had, asked them to elaborate on why they felt that their specific professional development was not effective. This question helped a lot, because along with this question, it prompted us to spark a greater conversation that everyone at the table had sufficient and a sufficient amount of feedback on. So in looking back though, if I were able to do anything differently, I would arrange the questions a little bit differently. I would use the same questions, but I would ask them in a different order. What I would do is, after brainstorming on the professional development, I would have followed up with the question of attending a non-effective professional development next. Then gone on to ask the question of what are some things that we should have done or that we should look at in developing a professional development. I believe in asking this question in a different order and rearranging the activity that followed would have helped the flow and the creativity of coming up with the ideas and the topics to consider when planning our professional development. So posing this question really got everyone looking at their experiences and reflecting on what they would strongly consider would really be needed to develop them personally as an educator. So after our discussion and activities, I then had each of my colleagues take a moment to write down the things on their note cards as an exit ticket that stood out most to them, or what they felt was most important. In other words, I had them to ask themselves, was there something that we discussed that was or could possibly be taken away or we would share with our campus leaders to pass along to help create more meaningful professional developments to better meet our needs. Something interesting that I learned from this experience was that you can never do enough planning. You should plan, and afterwards plan again. Always plan for the unexpected. So with that being said, I'd also like to apologize for the obvious things that appeared off or wrong through the video. Due to an unfortunate circumstance, I had to make a few last-minute changes. I had to change the location of our meeting, and I also had to use one of my GAP students to help us to record. As you could tell, I specifically asked my student to place the iPad on top of the textbooks that were blocking the view of the camera during the video to help her to hold the camera steady, but of course she didn't listen. That's just, what can I say, a perfect example of a GAP student and the defiance of authority. So anyways, thank you again for watching my video, and I hope that you enjoyed it.